Today on Sleeping Time, we talk about where we left off with that, and we finally start getting off to this. Hello, and thanks for slipping some time with me today. In this episode, I'll catch you up where I am on this 1989 Lotus Esprit restoration. There's been a number of episodes to get to this point. You might want to go back and watch those, but I'll just let you know where I am. This past week, I have went through a ton of parts that I need. Well, not a ton, but I've almost got 100 on my list here. And I've got to basically see if they're available. So I've had 3 particular vendors that the Lotus community has sanctioned, we'll call it, I guess, or recommended to me. And those are JE parts in California, and then there's 2 in the UK that are pretty common, and they're PNM parts as well as SJ sports cars. And I've called them all now, or contacted them all. One was by email because I couldn't get a hold of them by phone. And all good people to talk to. And now this list is not exhaustive at all. This is my preliminary list so I can get this going for painting. In the last episode I talked about that a little bit, but basically when I get this painted, I don't like to give a painter, when they're mixing paint and get everything ready to paint, to have to do some of it and then some of it later on. So I do have to get some parts that are going to be painted from those vendors. So I can't get this ready for that until I receive them, and I don't know how long it's going to take. I hope it's sooner than later, but I do know that I'm going against a lot of shipping delays right now. Some of it will be coming from the UK to myself, which is in Canada, and that's going to take some time, and it takes them a bit to get through my list to find the stuff. Some of them even talk about fabricating some of the stuff if they don't have it, because they do that if they see a market for it. We'll see how that goes, and I'll keep you kind of along the way how that's going. One of the particular pieces I need is these flaps, because in previous episodes I explained what I got to change here to get this back to factory or stock, and those flaps need to be painted, and plus the work in there, what it's looked like to put the hinge and assembly and stuff back in. So I definitely need those, and there's a few other little things that I'm going to wait for before I send this off to where I want it painted, and I'll see if I can actually keep up on that as well with who's going to paint it. I'm sure they'll be open to that, but I haven't talked to them to see if I can go in their shop from time to time how it's going. Yeah, so that's where I'm at as far as the parts ordering, and I can't do a lot on the body really until then. I could do some interior work, but I'd rather not do that until it's painted, because a lot of dust and hands in there or whatever, and I've got to replace the window, so I've got a bit of stage process where I'll take the window out and then we'll paint it, and then there's a dash piece that I want to do in there as well, recover before I put the window back in. So there's a bit of steps that have to be done in sequence when I do this. So we'll see how that goes. So in the meantime, I have cleaned up my shop a bit so I can move around. Again, in the last episode, and the last few episodes, you see parts are accumulating all around here that I've been removing from here. I've kind of cleaned it up. I've put some in my shed. I've put some in the mezzanine that I have up there. I put some back on the shelves up there. And I've put some back kind of along the lift here, as you can see, and back there as well. So I can go on to whatever I'm doing next. Now, what am I doing next? I will get back to some of the other cars, but on the Lotus, I think I can get to this chassis a bit. We're going to start on it, deciding what to do first, but I think in this episode we'll do a couple things. I'm going to see if I can rejuvenate that galvanized chassis there, because I don't want to powder coat it. I've talked about doing that in the past. Definitely some of you said don't do that. I still think it's okay to do if you want to, particularly in the climate I'm in, because I don't think it'll rust. I don't think it'll flake off, that sort of thing. Plus, it's never going to see even rain, this car. But I do want to keep it original, and this galvanizer is in pretty good condition. I do need to clean it up. I haven't ever cleaned up galvanized. There's not a lot of information on how to actually clean galvanized without taking the galvanized off out there, but I have a couple ideas from what I've looked at and what I've seen and from my own experience that I'm going to try and do and see if I can do something with it. I have to try anyway. The other thing that maybe I'll do in this episode is I'll start dismantling, because I want to pull the motor off, and basically I'm stripping the chassis down and cleaning everything up. So I'll start with the exhaust and we'll go through that a little bit. So let's get going. So I figure the best place to start is probably one of the grimiest spots on this chassis is right in here. Now I think some of it's oxidized. It's got caked on dirt probably from its original days of being made since then. So many years. It's in 1989, so we're looking at, it's 2022 now, isn't it? So we're looking at 33 years. Some of you aren't as old as this car, I'm sure, that are watching, and some of you probably were 33 when this car was built, I'm guessing. And let's just say I'm somewhere in the middle of that. Anyway, yeah, so I'm going to try and clean this up and show you what might work and what fails, I guess, and we'll go from there. I also should tell you too that I've got a lot of pieces to order just on this chassis, suspension. I'm going to do some brake lines, I'm going to do some engine stuff, I'll take you through that as well, the exhaust. So this itself has a whole order that I'm going to have to put together on it. If you're interested in all the crap that I ordered, I shouldn't say crap, but all the needed pieces and components that I need, that I found I need anyway, and I'm probably missing some still in the end for the body up there, let me know. I can go through the list, but I think it's kind of boring stuff. Some of you that watch my previous videos probably got an idea of the stuff I need, and maybe when I put it all together I may reference some of the stuff that I had to replace, but those will be in future videos, and we'll do that. So let's just see what I can do to try and clean this up and what works. Let's take a closer look at how grimy this is. And as I do this, like it doesn't even, it's pretty dirty. I don't know how well that's going to come off, but we're going to find out. Just for comparison, there's a piece of galvanized that hasn't been touched. You can see right here some glue basically from when they glued this on that they spilt over, but yeah, so compared to that, you can see what I'm up against, but let's give it a shot and see what works and what doesn't. I'm going to start with some simple green. That's kind of my go-to always to start with. I've got other kinds of cleaning solution. I could try soap and water first, but I'm going to start with simple green and just see what that does. I may have to let it soak a bit, and that's no problem, and we'll go from there. So let's spray it on. I'm very curious if this is going to clean up, because I'm seriously been worried about this quite a bit, and I really hope it comes back. So I haven't let it soak. Let me start with that. Took off a bit. I do have polishers in that too that I might have to give it a shot, but let's just see. And I'm not even using a microfiber. This honestly is an old sock that I cut up and used for rags. Just start with the easy stuff first. Came through a little bit, but I don't think that's going to cut what I need, so we're going to have to try something different. So I think I'm going to do soap and water first. I would actually like to try pressure washing this, but to do that I need to go outside, and let me show you why I won't be doing that. Yeah, no, not going to happen. How about the green scouring pad that we all are fond of? Don't expect a lot to happen on that, but no, nothing. Rim cleaner maybe. Let's try that. See what that does. I think I need a mask. actually helped a bit, but still not the results that I'm looking for. I'm going to try this little wheel that for removing rust. It's not a wire wheel, so it doesn't take too much off. I'm hoping I don't have to go wire wheel because that's probably taking the galvanized off too much, the zinc coating that's on it. So I'm going to try this because I think it needs some pretty heavy artillery. It's worth a shot anyway. Okay, I'm a little worried about this taking too much of it off, the galvanized, so I got to be very careful in doing this. Okay, that's just taking the galvanized off. That's the dangerous thing to do. Huh. I don't know. So what do you think I should do, folks? I would really like to preserve the galvanized, but it's so corroded, I think, now that it's etched into the galvanized to clean it up. And I do want this clean. This is definitely too abrasive, what I used here. I've got other polishers I could try. This might have to wait till summer anyway, because if I do end up polishing this, even if I was doing this, it makes such a mess in the shop unless you have a contained space to catch everything. And as you can see, that outside is just not going to be conducive to doing any of this work, whether it's pressure washing or even polishing, because it's really cold out. So I think I'll just strip the chassis off with all the components. And as I go, we'll decide how I'm going to attack this. If you guys have any ideas, if you've had experience trying to preserve galvanized, and ideas on how to clean this up and get this back without hurting the galvanized zinc material on it, please let me know. I have, again, tried to research this. There's not a lot out there to try. All other metals, yeah, I mean, you can polish it because you always take a little bit off. You know, stainless steel, aluminum, all that, but that's easy because it doesn't rust. This is steel with galvanized dip, and you want it to be not take it off because that's the point of stopping it from rusting. And it's a pretty thin, can't remember exactly how thin, but it's a pretty thin layer, that galvanized. It's tough as far as, you know, taking abuse to a point, but polishing and stuff I think takes it off too easy. As I kind of can tell, I don't know how much I've taken off just with this, but it definitely has happened. So let me know what you think, and got some time to figure that out, but I do want to get it figured out because if I am going to end up going back to powder coating or doing some other, or dipping it again or something like that, then I do want to send it away over the winter time and have it ready for, you know, next spring, fall, or whatever that comes up, and start putting it together so I don't have delays in the progress, and also videos of it for you guys. So I guess we have some decisions and research to do. So now that it's dried up a bit, I actually, you know, a pressure washer might clean this up pretty good. Because that's just a bit of scrubbing that you've seen. I soaked it with some tire or wheel cleaner, not tire cleaner, wheel cleaner, rim cleaner, and it isn't horrible. I mean, it doesn't look like that, obviously, but it might work. Again, that was just too much, what happened there. And really want to hear what ideas or what you know works, if you guys have done this before. It'll be a challenge, I'm sure, but I'm willing to do it. Whatever might work, I guess, in preserving that. So next I'm going to tackle the exhaust. And why I'm doing that is I'm really going to remove take the engine and the transmission out, and that seems like the logical first step when I look at how everything's assembled here. We'll talk about the exhaust a little bit. Now, I would like to call this an aftermarket exhaust setup. but it's really just, I'll call it a homemade setup. They've kept, you know, everything stocked to here, and then they used some mild steel. They welded to a Flowmaster muffler, and then they put some, I think it's chrome tips. It isn't stainless. They put some chrome tips on here, which looks okay, and I like how they split it. Even though it's a 4-cylinder, it doesn't have the single outlet for exhaust, and I like the symmetry of it. It helps it breathe a bit. But what they did keep, which to me is a restriction, especially for any turbocharged car trying to breathe, is they've kept the catalytic converter. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm sure this doesn't function well anymore anyway. And they also have a exhaust back pressure valve that's right here. And this was more of an American thing. They had this in for emissions, from my understanding. And it's a valve that when its engine's cold, that it actually creates some back pressure. It's like a throttle valve that closes, throttle plate, or partially closes depending. And it's used off a vacuum on your up here. And it ends up causing some back pressure for emissions, containment, et cetera, until it's warmed up. A restriction, I don't think I need that, so I'm going to get rid of that. But they should have just put an adapter little port in here that allowed it to flow to get rid of that little throttle plate. What they did is they ended up just keeping it open all the time is what they've done here. And they did it, kind of short and dirty like that. Another thing they didn't do, and I'll show you that, it's called a throttle capsule. It's this guy hooked up to your throttle and that. They should have removed that as well. That's part of the control for the back pressure valve. They didn't remove that, so that's going to go. And then apparently that can give you problems later as it gets stiff and causes some idle problems anyway. So we'll get rid of that. And that's got to be at least a few grams, few ounces to get rid of weight, right? This is stock, by the way. I don't know. There's a separate port here for, I don't know if it was ever used in the previous, versions of this, or this model, I guess. This is an 89, but were they done in the S1s, S2s? Why there's an extra port in there. I guess you could put an EGT, exhaust gas temperature probe in there if you wanted. That works out, but that's the O2 sensor right there. But yeah, I noticed there's a little extra port there from the stock. Maybe someone knows what that is and they can put that in the comments. Hey, time to start disassembling. Let's get to it. I'm not going to take the turbo out right now. The O2 sensor, I should dismount that, but I'm just going to leave it on right now. And we'll start taking this off the turbo and work our way down. Well, let's get the impact out. Well, that was pretty simple to take off. As you can see, we're going to get more sophisticated as we go on what we're taking off. And honestly, the work to get that off wasn't a lot, but it was a big step to get here. As you can tell from some of my other videos, to all the work to get here, to get the body off, to get to this point, to finally get onto the chassis. Yeah, it's a pretty big step for me anyway to get there. So this is just, we'll call it step one to ripping this all apart and getting it down to the backbone chassis, to get into the engine, the transmission, clean things up. And that's going to be all coming up in future episodes. I've also got other cars that you have seen in past videos. I've got cars that you haven't seen. I've got some outside as well. I've probably got cars that I haven't purchased yet or found that I'm going to put on here, or buddies' cars I may be working on. If you like that sort of thing, please like, subscribe, and share. Do the bell thing as well to get notifications. Until the next episode, enjoy every day, and always make it right.